Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidates interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Eve Galanter, and I would like to introduce Bill Connors, running for the State Assembly in District 48. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. I'm Bill. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. As we begin, I'd like you to give an opening statement as to the educational, vocational, and civic experience you have, which qualifies you for the office and why you are running for the State Assembly.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bill. I was born and raised in Madison and attended La Follette High School. I'm a lifelong Badgers fan, and I proudly received a bachelor's degree and 2 graduate degrees from the UW-Madison. Over 15 years ago, my wife, Joan, our 4 children, and I moved to Sun Prairie from Evansville, Wisconsin, where I'd been the city administrator. 3 of our children were born in India, and we adopted them shortly before we moved to Sun Prairie. We love Sun Prairie with its rich history as a rural community and the many shopping, dining, and entertainment venues that are more recent additions. Friends and neighbors in Sun Prairie encouraged me to run for city council. I was honored to be elected and then twice re-elected. My peers elected me council president twice. I'm proud of what we accomplished during my 5 years on the city council, especially how we fought for and won a budget initiative providing first-time city funding for community schools. Community schools provides crucial services to students and their families. At the time of the tragic gas explosion in 2018, I was 2 blocks away in City Hall. I will never forget that tragic evening, or how the residents, the people of Sun Prairie came together to help the victims. We were and continue to be Sun Prairie strong. I'm ready to serve the residents of Assembly District 48 from the vibrant east side of Madison to booming Sun Prairie and the surrounding townships, all the way to the beautiful rural areas in Dodge County. I humbly ask for your vote in the Democratic primary on August 13th.
Thank you. Is there any process you believe the Wisconsin legislature should put in place now for redistricting after the next national census?
Absolutely. I believe there should be a constitutional amendment to the Wisconsin Constitution to provide for a nonpartisan redistricting commission, or it may be a slightly different model where the 2 major parties, appoint some of the people, pick some of the people who are going to be on the commission, and then there's some nonpartisan people as well, so that we can take the politics out of redistricting. And in the meantime, the legislature should enact a commission just like this by legislation rather than by constitutional amendment, because constitutional amendment takes a while. That's the solution. Now that's going to be challenging given the political climate, but that's really what we need to do to have something in place. And then if that can't get enacted, well, then it'll have to be done by the courts.
What issues, if any, do you think you could work on effectively in a bipartisan manner in the next session?
Well, I hope that we will be able to work on, in a bipartisan manner, addressing the housing crisis in the state of Wisconsin. I was thinking that was primarily a Dane County thing, but as you talk to people all around the state, it's not just a Dane County thing. It's in community after community, we're seeing escalating housing prices and escalating rents because of an imbalance of supply between supply and demand of housing. And that's an issue that Democrats and Republicans should be able to work on together. During the last legislative session, there were some laws that were passed on a bipartisan basis to start to try to address that issue, but they were kind of like baby steps. But I have contacts within the development community that I can draw upon, as well as all of my friends on the Democratic side. So I think there's great opportunity for the state legislature to do more to address the housing issue.
What role, if any, do you think the legislature should have in addressing conditions in Wisconsin's state prisons?
Well, certainly the situation is alarming, and we're seeing criminal investigations of people responsible for our prisons. That's a terrible situation to be in. There is. I know the legislature recently approved increases in pay for the people working in the prisons so that we can attract more people, better people to be working in the prisons, because right now they're terribly understaffed. My understanding is that pay increase is actually having a positive impact, and the scope of how far they are short people in corrections is getting smaller. So they're closing the gap, but there may be a need for another round of pay increases from the legislature to address that issue, because when the people working in the prisons are working ridiculously long hours and trying to cover multiple shifts, that's a recipe for them not doing what we need them to do in terms of caring for the people who are incarcerated, who are in the care of the state.
What role do you think the state legislature has in ensuring successful outcomes for all students, including those with disabilities?
That's a great and important question. I am absolutely passionate about needing to increase the amount of state funding for our K-12 education, as well as technical colleges and public universities. For decades, the funding hasn't kept up, the state funding hasn't kept up with inflation. And as a result, the school districts are being forced to go out to referendums to try to get the voters to approve spending more property taxes on providing more property tax revenue for the schools, because the state isn't doing its part. The state has been for years underfunding special education, and as a result, the school districts with limited money are now having to take from their general revenues to cover what the state should be covering for special education. So I definitely would support like a 66% share of state funding for public education, for special education, excuse me. And then so also the formula itself treats like every student at every school the same for funding purposes, rather than looking at what the level of needs are. There should be weight like the weight like a weight of an object for students, for school districts that have a great many students who are, say, in poverty or have other factors that will make it more challenging for them to succeed. And the current formula doesn't reflect that at all. So then, in addition to just more money, there needs to be a change in the formula to more equitably fund our public schools.
Are there any steps you believe the legislature should take to further address mental health and substance abuse disorders?
Well, certainly it is much better to work with people who have those issues, to treat them, to give them the resources they need, rather than to have them go untreated, because that results in a whole cascade of first of all, tragedy for those people, but also very often very adversely affects the people around them. And so, yes, we need adequate funding, much greater funding at the state level for those kinds of services, so that people can get the help and treatment that they need.
What other priorities do you have for your term in office?
Okay, well, I think I mentioned the housing issue. I think we talked about that. We talked about school funding, K-12 school funding, which is high priority. But again, I'll mention the technical colleges and public universities. Particularly for technical colleges, I want to emphasize that it's also part of that housing issue, that in addition to kind of the economics of housing being very challenging, we don't have enough people going into the skilled building trades right now. And the technical colleges are a big part of that. We need them to have state level funding on a consistent basis for part of the training that needs to happen in the technical colleges for people to go into union apprenticeship programs in the skilled trades. So that's extremely important. It's something that would be a high priority for me. And we have been underfunding our public university system again for decades. And we're seeing the result of that. We're seeing some of our public universities in grave financial difficulty, and we're closing down two-year campuses around the state. I really worry about that. Next thing we're going to start seeing closings of four-year campuses around the state because of the lack of state funding of our public universities. I also defend reproductive rights and access to reproductive health care. And another high priority is protecting our environment.
What would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
Well, thank you. I've appreciated the opportunity to speak with you, Eve. I have again mentioned I'm passionate about supporting our public schools and teachers and providing a quality education for all of our kids. And I volunteered on 2 Sun Prairie area school district planning committees while I was on the city council. For renters and families who want to buy their first home, the soaring cost of housing is just absolutely crushing. In my current job, I advocate every day for local government ordinances and policies that will make all housing more affordable by increasing the supply of housing and reducing costs. With your help, I will continue that fight in the state legislature. Thank you.
I want to thank Bill Connors for speaking with us and thank the viewing audience for taking the time to know your candidates. I want to remind everyone that primary election day is Tuesday, August 13th, and the general election is Tuesday, November 5th. Every election is important. Please vote. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I thank you for joining us.